Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Global Pulse in 60 Seconds. I'm your host, Hisra Ahmed, and today's episode features Christian Espinosa, founder and CEO of Blue Goat Cyber. He's a cybersecurity expert, best-selling author, endurance athlete, and one of the leading voices in medtech cybersecurity and FDA-compliant device safety. He joins me today from Arizona. Christian, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on a podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Christian, I'd love to begin with your journey. You've had a unique path from military service into medtech cybersecurity leadership. Can you take us through that transition and the key moments that shaped where you are today?
Well, I feel like I'm constantly transitioning in some capacity or another. For the military, the thing I enjoyed about the military was the sense of purpose and camaraderie and a common mission. And I feel like I have that now at Blue Goat Cyber. My team is very behind what we're doing. We have a sense of purpose. We're helping medtech innovators bring safe and secure products to market. And that's a very exciting journey to be part of because there's an impact. We're not just protecting someone's credit card information, we're actually helping patients that need new technology. And it's something that I'm very behind because without a medical device, a medical technology, I wouldn't be here. A few years ago, after I sold my first business while I was working for the parent company, I developed 6 blood clots and almost died. But thanks to a medical device, I was able to be quickly diagnosed and treated. And I often wonder if that device was recalled because of a cybersecurity incident or it gave a misdiagnosis, then I wouldn't be here. So thanks to that medical technology, I'm here. And I thought that was a wake-up call for me to start a new business and focus on medtech cybersecurity and leverage the experience I had with my first business starting all the way back in 2014 with medical device cybersecurity.
Christian, it's great that you're feeling, at your best now and that you recovered. That's really awesome. Now, that journey from discipline and mission in the military to protect the most critical systems in, healthcare is powerful. And it's clear that your background gave you that perspective, which most in this field simply don't have, which brings us to the people now building in this space, because the gap between what founders understand about cybersecurity and what they should understand is a real and urgent problem. So many innovators underestimate the importance of cybersecurity in medical devices. From your experience, what do most founders misunderstand about medtech cybersecurity?
I think there's a few main common threads we see. The first one is it's looked at often as an IT issue, information technology issue, and it's looked at about data. But the reality is, with medical technology, cybersecurity is about patient safety.
Mhm.
And we also have to look at it, if someone can hack in a device, what is the effect to a patient? But it's also what is the effect to the clinical workflow? If this device has to be removed, what is the impact to the patient safety? So there's a couple of lenses we have to look at for that angle. And I think probably number two is we have to look at it from the entire life cycle of the product. A lot of medtech innovators just look at what do I need to do to get the device on the market. But then once it's on the market, how does the healthcare delivery organization govern that device? If there's a vulnerability, how is a patch pushed to that device? If it needs to be recalled, how's it recalled? It has to stay on the market as well. And when you put something on the market, it's in what we consider a hostile environment. A hospital or healthcare delivery organization are notorious for being compromised. So that medical device is being constantly going to be try to be compromised itself. So it needs to be resilient as well. And I would say that the third common misunderstanding that we hear a lot is medical device technology and medical device cybersecurity is a very niche and very specific space. And we see medtech innovators engaging with what I call traditional cybersecurity vendors that don't understand the regulated industry. They don't understand that it's not about the data, it's about patient safety. So they do the wrong sort of cybersecurity testing, analysis, and risk assessment. And then that work has to be redone by a company like mine that understands this space, the regulations, that's about patient safety, that it takes like 7 years and $35 million on average to bring a product to market. It's a very different space than like Silicon Valley in the United States.
Absolutely. And the assumption that cybersecurity is something or security is something you layer at the end rather than build in from the start is truly costing companies far more than they realize, as you just said. And what's particularly striking is how much of that stems from not knowing where to even begin with the regulatory landscape. Now with Now we know that cybersecurity and FDA compliance often feel overwhelming to early teams. How do you guide companies through these technical and regulatory expectations?
I think clarity removes the overwhelm, and we come up with a clear roadmap. We work with the manufacturer to understand the market they're trying to get into. And it's not just the market, though, it's also which healthcare delivery organizations are you trying to sell into? And we have to reverse engineer that and come up with a roadmap because FDA clearance, as an example, may get your device on the market, but if you're trying to sell into a specific healthcare delivery organization, they may have additional cybersecurity requirements. So you have to reverse engineer that. So we work with them to figure that out, come up with a strategy, and come up with the steps. And the steps are usually like look at the architecture, what the intended uses are, where their end client's going to be. We do threat modeling, we look at the requirements, and then we validate those requirements. And that's just from a very high level. There's a lot of smaller steps in there, but that's what we do in a very systematized manner with clarity.
We will come to threat modeling. It sounds like the clearest thing you offer teams is not just technical direction, but the confidence to move forward without being paralyzed by what they don't know, yet know. And a lot of that comes from down to the specific frameworks and tools that make cybersecurity visible and manageable. And your work includes threat modeling, as you mentioned, SBOM documentation, and vulnerability testing.
Mhm.
Can you explain why these are essential for safe device design?
As you're designing the product, I think it's important to do the threat modeling as an iterative process. And what threat modeling is, we're looking at all the ways an attacker can get into your product. We call it the entry points, the entry points that attacker can get into the product. It could be through the software bill of materials, through a third-party library. It could be a USB port. It could be a NFC port, a Wi-Fi. It doesn't matter. We have to look at these entry points. And then what controls do we have in place around those entry points? And if they are able to get in through one of these entry points, what can they do? It's kind of like where I live now. I have a condo, but I've got windows, I've got doors, I've got locks. So I know all the entry points. And if somebody can get through one of them, what else could they do, right? If I have a safe, there's another thing they have to get through. But if I don't, then there's one less control in place. So we have to look at that. And this is something that is continuous. Threats evolve, products evolve. So it's not a one and done activity. It's a continuous thing we have to do.
Christian, what comes through clearly is that these aren't just compliance boxes to tick. They are the very architecture of trust between a device and the patients who depend on it. Now, when you sort of zoom out from the device itself to the broader healthcare system it operates within, the implications become even more significant. And you've really given a very good example. Now, secure by design principles do more than strengthen devices, they directly support global well-being. In practical terms, one, how does building security into a medical device from day one help protect patients? And two, improve trust and contribute to safer healthcare systems worldwide?
Designing cybersecurity into the product inherently makes it more secure. It's nearly impossible to add cybersecurity later on and make the product secure. It's like if I'm building a house and I'm laying the foundation, if I skip a bunch of things in the foundation and the house is almost complete and I realize that I messed up the foundation, it's very costly to go back and redo all that. And the house is on shaky ground and may fall down. It's the same concept. And the other aspect is from a trust perspective, we want to have traceability. We want to be able to prove that our device is secure. And this is a big requirement today, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger requirement is this traceability. If a manufacturer has a claim that my product does X, where's the evidence? And can we trace that evidence back to the design, back to a control, back to a test that validates that claim? And that's where this breaks down a lot because if you bolt something on at the end, that claim is very loosely held up because there's no traceability to a design decision or requirement for that control to be in place. So that trust is going to break down as well.
That's very true. And that connection between security decision made in the design phase and a patient's safety years, later on in a hospital halfway around the world is exactly why this conversation matters so much. And building on that global perspective, if you could offer one key insight to innovators developing connected medical devices across different countries and healthcare systems, what should they prioritize to ensure their technologies genuinely enhance global well-being?
I think they need to prioritize the life cycle readiness. And that means the product from design until disposal and everywhere in between needs to have cybersecurity in mind. Because even when a healthcare delivery organization decides to get rid of your product, is the data on there encrypted? Is it secure as example? How do they get rid of it securely? So we have to look at that entire life cycle. And it's not just about FDA clearance or MDR clearance, it's the entire life cycle. And do we have the right controls in place to make sure it's secure from design to disposal?
Christian, what you've shared today is a reminder that cybersecurity in medtech is not a technical footnote. It is a fundamental act of care for every patient whose life may depend, one day on a connected device like yours did. So thank you so much, Christian. It has been a genuine privilege to have you on Global Pulse in 60 Seconds.
Well, thank you for having me on.